The morning of September 11, 2001, began in ordinary silence for millions of Americans. The skies across the eastern seaboard were remarkably clear, a late summer blue stretching from horizon to horizon. Commuters hurried into subways, schoolchildren filled buses, and workers streamed into office buildings in New York City, Washington, D.C., and countless other places, unaware that the normalcy of that day was about to be shattered. In Lower Manhattan, the World Trade Center complex buzzed with its usual rhythm. Thousands of employees prepared for meetings, answered phones, and settled into the routines of finance, technology, and commerce. For the city, the Twin Towers were more than buildings, they were the beating heart of Wall Street's energy, icons of American economic strength. Far away from the busy sidewalks and crowded elevators, 19 men prepared themselves for what they believed would be their final act. These men were operatives of Al-Qaeda, a terrorist organization founded and led by Osama bin Laden. Their mission was brutal, calculated, and devastatingly simple: hijack commercial airliners and use them as missiles against iconic American targets. For months, they had trained in obscurity. Some had attended flight schools in the United States, blending in as ordinary students while mastering the basics of aviation. Others had quietly settled into apartments, bought box cutters, and rehearsed the choreography of their plan. They had been selected for their loyalty, their willingness to die, and their belief that by striking America on its own soil, they would send a message that would echo around the world. At 8:46 a.m., the first strike occurred. American Airlines Flight 11, having been hijacked after departing Boston for Los Angeles, tore into the North Tower of the World Trade Center between the 93rd and 99th floors. The explosion rocked the building, fire and smoke billowing into the sky. Office workers screamed and scrambled for stairwells, while others, trapped above the impact zone, desperately called loved ones or waved from shattered windows. News cameras quickly turned their lenses toward the burning skyscraper, filling television screens across the country with images of flames and confusion. At that moment, many still believed it to be a tragic accident, a plane gone astray, a nightmare scenario no one could yet fully understand. 17 minutes later, horror clarified into certainty. At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 slammed into the South Tower in a fiery eruption captured live on television. The nation watched as fireballs consumed floors and black smoke poured into the sky. The sight removed any possibility of accident. This was deliberate. America was under attack. In the streets below, panic erupted. Pedestrians fled, dust and debris rained down, and emergency vehicles screamed toward the towers. Inside the buildings, firefighters, police officers, and rescue workers pushed upward into danger, determined. In the immediate days following the 9/11 attacks, the American people found themselves struggling to reconcile shock, grief, and anger with an urgent need for unity and action. The horrifying destruction of the Twin Towers, the gaping wound in the Pentagon, and the smoldering field in Pennsylvania became more than isolated acts of terror. They symbolized a national trauma that reverberated through every home and community. Vigils were held in towns across the United States. Strangers embraced in the streets, churches overflowed with mourners, and the American flag was raised on porches, storefronts, and car antennas from coast to coast. The atmosphere carried both solemn mourning and an unprecedented sense of togetherness, a feeling that no matter the differences in politics, religion, or background, the nation had suffered together. In Washington, leaders scrambled to assess the scale of the threat and to organize a coherent response. The Pentagon had suffered direct damage, and the capital city remained on edge. Security was heightened not only in major cities but also in small towns, airports, seaports, and government installations. Air travel was grounded for days, creating eerie silences over skies that were normally filled with aircraft. When flights resumed, passengers encountered a new reality: armed guards, extensive screenings, and heightened suspicion of anything unusual. The Transportation Security Administration, TSA, was soon formed to centralize and strengthen airport security, a change that reshaped air travel permanently. Americans who once saw flying as a routine part of modern life began to view it with unease. In the political sphere, President George W. Bush took on a role that demanded not only leadership but also a clear articulation of what had happened and what needed to follow. On September 14, speaking at Ground Zero with a bullhorn amid rescue workers, Bush declared that the world would soon hear from the United States. His words became a rallying cry, symbolizing both defiance and resolve. Meanwhile, Congress quickly authorized the use of military force against those responsible, a decision that set the stage for America's long wars abroad. While the authorization received near-unanimous bipartisan support, it also opened the door to questions about how far the government could go in pursuit of security and retribution. The collective American reaction was not solely political or militaristic. In homes and communities, a surge of patriotism was balanced by waves of anxiety and suspicion. Arab Americans, Muslim communities, and South Asians began to experience discrimination, verbal harassment, and in some tragic cases, violent hate crimes. Despite the many calls for tolerance from political leaders and religious figures, the raw anger directed at perceived outsiders showed the darker side of grief and fear. Yet at the same time, organizations dedicated to civil rights and interfaith dialogue worked tirelessly to pu. The years that followed 9/11 were defined by both the resilience of the American spirit and the profound transformations in politics, culture, and global relations. The initial unity that had held the nation together began to fracture as debates over policy, war, and security deepened. While the slogan, "Never Forget," remained etched in public consciousness, its meaning evolved depending on the speaker. Some used it to call for vigilance against terrorism, others to demand justice for the victims, and still others as a critique of policies that seemed to betray the very freedoms the terrorists had sought to undermine. One of the most enduring legacies of 9/11 was the expansion of government power under the banner of security. The USA Patriot Act, passed swiftly after the attacks, granted law enforcement sweeping surveillance capabilities, including access to phone records, financial transactions, and private communications. Supporters saw these tools as essential to preventing another attack, but critics raised alarms about privacy, constitutional rights, and potential abuse. Over time, revelations about mass data collection and intelligence practices fueled national debates about the proper balance between freedom and security in a democratic society. This tension became a defining feature of American political discourse in the 21st century. The wars that followed 9/11 shaped not only America's foreign policy but also its social fabric. The war in Afghanistan, which began with overwhelming public approval, turned into a drawn-out conflict that lasted 2 decades. Thousands of American service members lost their lives, and countless more returned home with visible and invisible wounds. The invasion of Iraq in 2003, justified by claims of weapons of mass destruction and ties to terrorism, became one of the most controversial decisions in modern American history. While some viewed it as a necessary extension of the fight against terrorism, others saw it as a costly diversion that destabilized the Middle East, strained alliances, and diverted attention from al-Qaeda. These wars came to define an entire generation, shaping public attitudes toward military intervention, trust in government, and the limits of American power. At home, the cultural impact of 9/11 was vast and complex. Films, television, literature, and music wrestled with the tragedy, sometimes directly and other times symbolically. Hollywood shifted toward themes of sacrifice, resilience, and national security, while documentaries sought to preserve the voices and experiences of survivors, first responders, and families of the victims. Patriotism surged in the early years, expressed through flags, ceremonies, and renewed reverence for national symbols. Yet as time passed, skepticism grew, particularly among younger Americans who came of age in a post-9/11 world shaped by endless war and invasive security measures. For them, 9/11 was less a vivid memory than a historical marker that had